generally, what I'm hearing consistently is that there's no religion that's got all the answers. They all lead to the same garden. My new saying I like to say is all roads lead to home, which is that place that we go back to. And so it doesn't matter if somebody's got it right or got it wrong or have a mistake, or that's the path that they chose. So to be here and hang out and experience and, be the scientist with the helmet on, the cone of silence. Because, listen.
Well, he's got a few books, but Hacking the Afterlife is the latest book, which I haven't read yet, actually. I'm going to read that book. And I'll pop the Amazon links up on my website. I'll put this YouTube and iTunes on my website, on a page on my website, and I'll put my affiliate links there. I always forget to tell people to do this. So if you want to buy his books, he's got The Tourist Guide to How to Navigate the Afterlife, which is called The Flipside. It's a Wonderful Afterlife. He's got a few books, and these are books that are all researchers, but his latest book is Hacking the Afterlife. That's the one where he's got Jesus and Amelia Earhart in there having a chat from the other side. So it'd be interesting to see what they have to say in Hacking the Afterlife. So head on over to my website and, purchase them on my affiliate link, and I'll get a couple of cents. It's a way of supporting the show. And thanks.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Whatever you want, my dear.
Whatever I want, there you go. Whatever I want. Hello and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. Well, I have the magnetic and wonderful Rich Martini with me today. Rich, known as Rich Martini.
Often stirred, rarely shaken.
This is going to be a fun interview. Let's call it a conversation. I never interview people. I do fire a lot of questions, but I like to have conversations, as you know, people who listen to the show. Now, let me just read his bio here. Now, what have we got? Now, Rich is a writer, director, author, and an award-winning filmmaker who has written and directed 8 theatrical features and a number of documentaries. His first book, Flipside, A Tourist's Guide to How to Navigate the Afterlife, went to #1 twice on Amazon. How did you do that? I'll have to pick your brain about how you did that. And the book is the transcription from the documentary he made, which is available also on Amazon. I'm reading this off Amazon, so Amazon's giving itself a plug, which is Flipside, Journey into the Afterlife. And
it's also on Gaia.
I'm getting there. Also on Gaia. I just watched, I watched it on Gaia recently because I watched you and George Norrie chatting it out the other day on Gaia TV, and which reminded me to reconnect with you and get this happening. Fabulous conversation with George Norrie. Love that. And I did watch The Flipside, which features Michael Newton, who has exited the Matrix, and he's on the flip side these days. And it's a great movie. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. What a treat to be here. I mean, here we are, the magic of the internet. Here we are. You're somewhere in down under, and I'm somewhere on the west coast of California. And I was just, off camera, I was saying I was down in Sydney, and I'll tell you, my experience being in Sydney, I felt like I had fallen into the future.
Really?
Because I was there in like 97.
Okay.
And I just assumed that Sydney would be not that different than, let's say, Manchester or some, old town in England with, industrial. No, there's a monorail. Every place I went to, every 7-Eleven has like the best cappuccino you could buy, or flat white. And I was just, and then going, the support system, getting on a boat and going across to the zoo and coming back. I just couldn't believe how advanced I felt being in Australia. So all I can say is I can't wait to go back, but nobody wants to invite me.
I'll invite you down back. I'm dying.
It's
I tell you what,
to go this way.
I speak to a lot of people in America, and I do look for fascinating people to talk to in Australia, and there are many of them. But I tend to, be attracted to the Americans. Don't know why, but I do have this dream to bring you all down under one day, and we'll,
that'd be great.
do some chats and feature you and do things. But anyway, one of the many things that I'm up to. But it's interesting to hear you say that about Sydney. I remember years ago when I was a kid, my uncle talking about how beautiful Sydney was. And this is a long time ago. He said, I've travelled the world. And at that point, I hadn't travelled the world. And he was saying, Sydney is one of the best cities you'll ever find in the world. And I remember thinking, really, is that true? And then I did a bit of travelling myself. And I guess it's not one of the best cities because there are just exquisitely beautiful cities, in Europe and places with history and architecture that's out of this world. And Sydney is like nowhere like that. But I suppose as a modern secular city, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just one of those things where I expected one thing and then I found something completely different. Right. And I must say, I've been fortunate enough to travel the planet. And for viewers who are tuning in who might know a little bit about my journey, it sort of began when a close friend of mine passed away, this actress, Luana Anders. And this is coming to Sydney in a second. But when she passed away, she started coming to visit me. And I started wondering, how is it that she could visit me? I was seeing her as younger than when I knew her. So I was getting new information from her. But ultimately, it was like she had lit a fire under me because I had her ashes. And I had said to her before she passed, I said, where do you want me to scatter your ashes? And she said, everywhere you go. And so from that point, I was like, oh, all right, well, just like her to give me a lifelong task. And so from that point, I suddenly went everywhere. It was very strange. I mean, I was in Moscow. I was all over the planet. I was in Tibet. I was in India. And I took some of her ashes with me wherever I went and put her in a river. So if you think of all the major rivers of the planet, she's there. And I must tell you that when I was in Sydney, I didn't tell everybody, look, you don't tell people in customs, what's that bag? And it's my cocaine. No, I was, I'd be carrying a little bit. One guy once opened up the bag. He said, what's that? I said, that's my friend Luana. He was like, I put that back in. Here, take that away. I got down to the Sydney Opera House and I thought, well, this is a good enough place. I'd never been there before, but the sky was, I kid you not, it was as gray as you've ever seen a gray sky. And the water was a little choppy. And I got out there and I poured a little Luana into my hand. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I had a handful of this ash and a wind picked up. And I was thinking, okay, it's getting windy. I better do this quick. And I threw the ashes into the water and they came right back and hit me in the face. The wind shifted in that moment. And I was covered and head to toe. I've never done that before or since. And I was laughing. And now it gets interesting because the sky opened up. I kid you not, Karen. The sky opened up and a shaft of light came right down to where I was standing.
Oh my
next
God.
to that opera house. And I thought, wow, this is hilarious. Not only has she orchestrated the ash in my face, but she's also somehow, I don't know how you orchestrate that, but it was very dramatic and I'll never forget it. I did take a picture. It's, it exists somewhere.
So she has a good sense of humor and maybe an even better sense of humor on the flip side.
Well, I can tell you that's a frequent thing that people say. So people familiar with my path and journey, just in a nutshell, Flipside, through Luana, she had told me that she had a recurring dream that she was somewhere in another galaxy in a classroom.
Okay, so she said this to you while she was embodied.
Yeah, while she was still.
Right. Still.
And I didn't, it was not a topic that we talked about, but she said to me, I think I'm going to another galaxy. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I have this recurring dream that I'm in a classroom and everyone's dressed in white. And they're speaking a language I've never heard before, but somehow I completely understand. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, that's the morphine drip. They're giving that to her. But then I mentioned it to her nurse, and the nurse said that was her dream. That's her dream. She had it all, talking about it all the time. And the day she passed away, I got a call from a close friend of hers who said, I had the most wonderful dream about Luana last night. She was in a classroom. She said in the fourth dimension, and it was a class in spirituality. And I thought to myself, what class? What is she talking about? And it really wasn't for another maybe 10 years that I was introduced to Michael Newton's work, this hypnotherapist from Los Angeles who did thousands of cases. And in chapter 1 of Journey of Souls, there's a guy saying, I'm in a classroom, and it's a class in spirituality. So at that moment, I took that as a message, like a doorbell, ding dong, to focus on this research and start a documentary. So I focused just on people under deep hypnosis, which is the method that Michael Newton had sort of perfected, 4 to 6 hour sessions. There's a wonderful hypnotherapist, not in Sydney, but he's in Melbourne. His name is Pete Smith.
I've spoken to Pete. I have spoken to Pete.
So, yeah, and Pete's the president of the Newton Institute.
Yeah.
And he appears there's an interview with him in the second book I did, which is called It's a Wonderful Afterlife. That's volume 1 and 2.
I know, I haven't even gotten to the books that you've got. You've got all these amazing books.
Nobody wants to hear about my credits. Let's just talk about dream time. That's what we want to get to. All right. So ultimately, like I say, Pete Smith, very good hypnotherapist in Australia, if you're looking to do this kind of journey. But I focus primarily, by the time I wrote Flipside, I had filmed 12 different sessions, and I had done 2. But then by the time since then I've filmed 45, and I've done 5. And so
when you say you've done personally 5, you've been hypnotized or not hypnotized, under 5 times.
Correct. Right. Different hypnotherapists.
Right.
And I did number 2 specifically because I was thinking about this research. Right. I had done my first session with a Michael Newton trained hypnotherapist in Chicago, a guy named Jimmy Quass. And I never thought I was going to get anywhere, but I went precisely where everybody says they go. And so I came back with all this footage, and I started transcribing it into a book. And then I thought, well, wait a second. What if I do another hypnotherapy session? What if I don't go there? What if I go somewhere else? What if I don't see myself as a Native American? What if I see myself as, it's an experiment. So Scott DeTamble, who's out here in Los Angeles, and I filmed a number of sessions with him, Scott said, well, why don't we try that? And Karen, it was as if I had left the garden gate open. He started counting me down. Right. Let's go deeper. He got the deep, and I was there. It was like I had left the door open. I was just stepping back into the state I had been 2 years earlier.
Okay,
what made it interesting in terms of research was that events that happened 2 years earlier that I experienced in real time, I'm stepped through the veil, I'm in a classroom, I'm talking to my friend Luana, which is a funny story because I didn't know you could get anywhere, but here I was doing this hypnotherapy session, and he said, where do you want to go? And I said, well, Jay, I'd love to visit my friend Luana. And now I'm in a classroom, and I see her, and it's a giant auditorium. And, I have this fan. I should turn that off. Giant auditorium. Sorry, you've probably been hearing this humming for a long time. And I start speaking. I appear. I see myself in the classroom, and I see everyone in the classroom turning around and looking at me like, what the hell is that? Like, just imagine if suddenly somebody appeared right here and started talking to us, and you and I would be like, what the hell is that? That's what they were doing. They were looking at me like, why is that guy talking? And I saw my friend Luana in the back of the class, but she was about 20, way before I met her. Right. And I look at her like, oh, there's Lou. And she looks at me like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? But I'm now responsible to talk to the hypnotherapist who's like, what are you seeing? And I go, well, I'm in a classroom and it seems like I'm not supposed to be here because they're all looking at me like, why are you talking? And I said, but I'm here. And I came all this way. Why don't I just talk? So I said, look, this is a classroom in the healing light of the universe. All these students are learning how to channel that light to heal people on earth. And as I said that, one of the students turned around and looked at me and he said, "You don't know what you're talking about." I thought, isn't this weird? If I'm making this up, why would I challenge myself?
Yeah.
But I said to the therapist, "Oh, he's telling me I don't have the story right. But listen, this is a classroom in channeling the light of the healing light of the universe, but not everybody signs up to be healed. Not every doctor signs up to cure everybody. Some people sign up to experience illness so they can become doctors in future lifetimes."
Right.
And when I said that, the student looked at me and said, "Well, I guess you do know what you're talking about."
Oh.
So I continued on. Now, the point of my story is 2 years later, I'm with Scott DeTamble here in California, and we're doing a session over at his
Different
office.
hypnotherapist, yep.
Different hypnotherapist. He says, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "I'd like to go," and I'm there. And now, but what's weird is 2 years have gone by, but 20 minutes have gone by. I'm in the class. The class is ending. I'm standing with Luana, who's now next to me. She's speaking to the teacher, very tall fellow, and saying, "This is my friend Richard, and he's working on this project, and I want to apologize for him interrupting our class." Imagine, like, what? Like, what's going on? Where am I? Oh my gosh, she's apologizing, and I'm looking at this tall teacher, and he looks at me, and he goes, "So what do you want to know?" And I thought, oh my God, this is so hilarious. I've traveled right back to this moment 20 minutes later, 2 years later. And I asked him my questions, so what is the class about? Is it about blah, 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 blah? So all I can tell you is time works different over there than it does here.
Well, it does, but I'm going to get back to that because I want to know what the questions were that you asked him and what he said to you.
Yeah. So, I transcribed that session, and it's in, I want to say, it might be the end of Flipside. It might be there. Mm-hmm. Because the first part of the book, I had the first session, and then the second one, I had the last one. But the kind of questions I asked him, and this is part of my journey, which is, let's pretend that we can access the other side. Let's just pretend. I'm not the only person who can. Karen can. Anybody can. If you ask the right questions, or anybody under hypnosis can, obviously. And if you say to somebody, "Oh, you're going to do a hypnosis session or hypnotherapy with a Newton-trained guy," ask if you can go into a classroom. And now they may not even know what you're talking about, but they're doing a session, and the hypnotherapist is looking at their stuff you wanted to look at. Wait a minute, what's this about a classroom? The person under hypnosis is now standing in some class that they're familiar with. And those classrooms, which I've been to many now since then, like I say, five times, I go to a lot of classes. And I say, "So what do you teach here? What is your class about?" And I've seen, I've experienced. It's hard to say I've experienced something when it doesn't make any sense. It's like saying I've been inside a rainbow. You say it and people look at you like, get out of here. All I can tell you is I've been in a classroom environment many times. I've spoken to teachers. Each one looks a little different. And I've asked them, "What do you teach here?" And it's always something to do with energy management. Fantastic. Meaning shifting energy. Well, I'll give you an example. One class I went to, they were teaching students how to create objects. So here's one right here. Okay. So it was something like this. It was something like a crystal, but it was pink. And the students all had these small pieces of pink crystal. They were like elongated, translucent. I could see them. And I said, "Okay, you guys are making crystal. How do you do that?" And the teacher said, "Let me show you." And he pointed to the chalkboard. No other way to put it. And there were these symbols on the chalkboard. Some of them I recognized. Sign for I think it's a circle with a line through it, and it has to do with time. So he was saying, and I said, "Explain these to me. What do they mean?" And he said, "They mean crystals are made with intention, over time, incredible pressure, You have to put a lot of pressure into it. But ultimately, the end result is this crystal. And I said, okay, well, what's the value of that? Well, later on in the session, I went into a room where that was filled with all these different crystals. Mm-hmm. Students themselves, using their intention, thought, were able to create physical objects. Why? Why is that worth noting? It's because it's what we do in between lives. We go back home, and we, depending what our background is, what our focus is, we might go to different realms and create planets that would help with life 50 million years from now.
Right.
So we're not allowed to interfere with life. That's sacrosanct throughout the universe. I've heard it many times.
Yeah.
But we are inspired to go and say, you mean if I take this little thing that I've created and I add that spinner aspect to it, right? I got those two things going. Wait a minute. I think I've got, a shell. Okay, I've created a shell. So you're starting the building blocks of life by doing this kind of work. So part of my journey is to try to ask questions to teachers on the other side to find out, hey, how do we fix the planet? How do we make salt water to fresh water cheaply? How do we fix air? Blah, blah, blah. And since those sessions between life, in a nutshell, I took my research from Flipside to the University of Virginia, and I presented it to the scientists there. Very forward-thinking guys that are on the cutting edge of this kind of research. They call themselves quantum scientists. And I said, guys, here's what I've learned. And they said, well, we don't consider hypnosis valid as a scientific tool. Well, that's okay. I said, however, even if you're using like a pyramid hat, when you have 1,000 people say the same things about the journey and they've never met each other, then you have a data set, however you got it. And so, by the way, since then, I've learned that they are studying hypnosis because I spoke to somebody who did some sessions. So they are using this. That was like 10 years ago when I presented that to them. But ultimately, they said, we have been focusing on near-death events because you can actually catalog that. A guy comes in, like, what did you see? Did you see a light? Did you see a person? What did you see? And Dr. Bruce Grayson is very, forefront of this research. Anyway, and so I started focusing on people who had near-death events. The theory being, if what people are saying under hypnosis about the afterlife is accurate, let's just pretend it is, okay? Set that aside. Then people who are having near-death events, which science has studied, let's examine their experiences. Do they match up? If somebody says, I went to heaven, or I went to see Uncle Pete, on a barge in Schenectady or whatever, in Darlinghurst, in Darlow, that's heaven. Well, then you'd have to find 2 or 3 other people who said the same thing, right? That would be the theory.
That would be the theory, yeah.
So what I found, I'm sorry to blab, you found a talker.
I know, it's great. You've answered so many questions that I kind of thought I'd throw at you. You've already answered them, but keep going.
No, I'm reading your mind.
I know, it's great. I can just sit back and
the stuff you wrote down.
Drink my cup of tea.
Go ahead. No, but that idea of, so if a near-death person has an experience, and this is what I found, which is people who claim they went to heaven. Bruce, what's his name? Ibn Alexander. His experience was, or the little kid, Todd Burpo, whose book was Heaven is for Real.
Yeah.
But, people find a way to sort of knock what they're saying. But what I focus on is what's new information. So in Ibn Alexander's case, even though he never calls it heaven in the book. They call it, the publisher put that on the book, but still, people talk about it as heaven, a place you have to go to, right?
Yeah, I know.
And so he meets a sister who he didn't know lived. He was adopted. after he was there, he had this experience where somebody guided him around the afterlife. And afterwards, he described this woman. I felt like I knew her forever, but I've never met her before. And then the adopted family, the family that put him up for adoption, sent him a photograph, and he recognized her immediately. That was the girl who had taken him around. She had died before he was born. So he couldn't have known her. It can't be cryptomnesia or something like that. Same thing with Todd Burpo. He was back home and saw his little sister, and he came back and said, "Why didn't you tell me I had a sister?" And his parents were like, "Well, we didn't want to tell you about that." But it's the point is not the content of what he's seeing, but the people that he's met. So he's met his sister. It's new information. So I'm focusing on that a little bit. What's the new piece of information here? And what I've discovered is that people who've had near-death events and these deep hypnosis sessions, they call that place not heaven, but they call it home. Because I found that after almost all of the sessions that I filmed, during the session, the hypnotherapist says, "Where do you want to go now?" And I did it too. And I say, "I want to go home." So I'm getting to the punchline, which is, so the past 2 or 3 years, I've been focusing on mediumship and how do mediums, you would think if they really are talking to somebody on the flip side, wouldn't they describe the same things that these other people, right? If they're actually somewhere. So I describe how I met this medium in my last book, Hacking the Afterlife, Jennifer Schaefer. And she works with law enforcement agencies on missing person cases. She's very good at what she does. I would say that not every medium is 100%. It all depends on who's asking the question and how that process is. Sometimes she misinterprets what she's seeing.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they give her something that is difficult to interpret, and so therefore you don't get quite the answer right. However, what I'm doing with her is instead of what a person normally goes to a medium for, they want to often, how's my love life? And like what's going to happen in the future, right? Those are the two big things.
Yeah.
I don't focus on those at all. 2 reasons. One is your love life is your love life. You probably set it in motion before you got here. And number 2, I've discovered there is no future that's locked in. There's likely outcomes.
Probable realities.
Probable realities, but based on free will, people screw those realities up.
And based on your vibrational frequency and what you're creating. Yeah, I know. Look.
Yeah. So, which now leads me to what we're doing now. I'm just finishing up now, but I've been doing it for about 2, maybe 3 years. I meet her once a week, and I interview people who are no longer on the planet. But I don't ask them to prove to me that they exist, because I've already proven that many times, that they do exist. What I'm focused on is give me new information about your journey. Who was there to greet you when you crossed over?
Yeah.
How do I look to you? What do you occupy your time doing now, during the day? If you create objects, if you create an object, how do you do that? And the answer is math.
Sacred geometry.
Math. I mean, we can call it sacred, but it's math. I mean, it's
sacred.
Right?
But that's, a human word. What do you call it? But cosmic geometry, consciousness geometry, whatever. Math. Yeah.
Well, one last thing. It's just funny about it, which is I was talking to Scott Tatamble, my friend who was trained by Michael Newton in hypnotherapy. He's very good. And I was talking to him about guides, about meeting guides. You meet these guides over there.
Yeah.
And I do it quite often in my work where I'm now having a conversation with, I'm talking to somebody who's seeing their guides, and I'm saying, describe them to me. And a lot of times they'll describe, these like wizard hats, or a shaft of light, or like a bishop mitre, and it's, or sometimes they're huge and whatever. They're majestic in so many ways, like that word sacred. They're majestically sacred. But when you ask them, can you show me what you look like to yourself? Like if you're holding a mirror up without all this props and costume, they're light. They're light.
Yeah.
And so as Scott said the other day, we're all just blobs of light.
Blobs of light.
And we do dress up to make it a more important statement, right? You know, you're channeling someone, let's say, and, you know, they're going to come through as like, you know, oh my gosh, they're 20 feet tall and they're pointing their finger at me and whatever. But ultimately, they're blobs of light. No different than you.
I know. Oh, Rich, you've said so much. It's been rich.
That's what I do.
I know. It's great interviewing you. I don't have to say anything.
That's the table. Now let's eat.
I know.
What do you want to know?
That's the table. Look, there's so many dishes I could pick up off this table, I tell you. So there's something that you said that stuck out that I just want to reiterate. So they experience this illness because they are going to be a doctor in a past life. I find that so important.
In a future life, yeah.
In a future life, in another life, sorry. I find that so important because so many people die tragic illnesses. You know, my daughter's stepmother died at 49 of cancer. Her mother died bowel cancer at 49 of bowel cancer. And I was having a bit of because I work as a medium and a channel and all that good stuff. I was having a bit of a fraught thought about it because she was young. My mother died at 50 of cancer. And I was thinking, you know, I could have died at 50 of cancer as well, because people say, oh, it was genetic. You know, if it happened to your mother, it's going to happen to you. And I'm thinking, that's BS. You know, we don't need to repeat our parents' lives. And that was something I set out not to do, hence what I do now. And so I was having a bit of a fraught sort of thought about it, and she came to me to tell you, and this grace just descended over me. I'll never forget it. I was shutting the curtains thinking, she didn't need to die so young. She didn't need to die so young. And she said, nothing has gone wrong here, Karen. Nothing has gone wrong. It's all perfect. Please don't fret. Please don't worry. It's all as it was supposed to be. And in that moment, I felt the peace of that and the grace of her communicating that to me. But I didn't understand why. And just listening to you say people, you know, create diseases and die of cancer because in a future life they're going to address that in some way, as a scientist, as a doctor, as a healer, as an energy, you know. So, and that just sort of dropped when you said that. The penny dropped when you said that. Yeah. And
so
fascinating what you're doing.
Well, wait a second now. This is your mom, right?
This was my daughter's stepmother. So it was my husband's second wife. Yeah. And so she's beautiful. Have you
seen her? Has she shown up since then?
Look, I just that one time, I really don't chat to her. I kind of got I got a whole mob I chat to. I call my guides the mob. And there's a lot of them. And you know, I see clients and, you know, I chat to their mob. And so it's kind of busy. We're kind of busy, but she hasn't been too present in my life. I think that she's more hanging out with, you know, my ex-husband and her. She's had 3 daughters. You know, she kind of hangs out with them more.
Yeah, she's got her hands juggling a lot.
Yeah, but, you know, okay, so you saw yourself on the other side in a classroom while in hypnosis. So this is showing us our multidimensionality. So we are leading these lives simultaneously. You are in your etheric astral body, whatever body you were in during that time being in that classroom. You know, the fact that 2 years later, you're 20 minutes into the same session is saying that you're there, you know.
I'm still there, right?
You're there now.
I'm just not aware of it.
You're dead and alive simultaneously. Like people say, you know, he died, where did he go? But the truth is, we never leave. Like,
well, it's an interesting... It's an interesting quantum conundrum, and I just want to, if I can address it for 1 second, and that is Michael Newton started asking people under deep hypnosis, so how much of your energy did you bring? And he found that people would say anywhere between 20 and 40%.
Yeah.
And then I included that question in the sessions that I filmed. And I found the same results. And so if you want to just put it simply, we only bring about 1/3 of our energy to any incarnation. 1/3, just 1/3. So what's the other 2/3 up to? And when I ask that question, the other 2/3, which is always back home, is attending class.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not just class, but having all kinds of adventures. So think of it as, so it's almost like quantum entanglement, because, you know, quantum entanglement is that weird thing of you have an ion over here and you have an ion over here, and if you affect this ion, this reacts, no matter where they are in the universe. I think it explains why you find soulmates, why you find people that are of like-mindedness, because you're vibrating about that same frequency, and you seek them out just the way they seek each other out. But it also explains this 2/3 of us always being home. So if in a simple sentence, it's like we're alive, conscious energy alive, before we come here. We dumb ourselves down because the human physique can't handle more than about 1/3. Some people, some avatars that have been here claim that they got a higher frequency. They got a little bit more like Jesus, let's say, or people that I've run across in this research, they claim that avatars bring more. That's why they seem so, when you get close to them, you have this feeling of unconditional love just being around them, because they're bringing more of source.
Can I say something here?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I read Michael Newton's books years ago, and a healer friend and I used to sort of play with some of this when we would get together. And I was chatting to him under, I don't like to use the word hypnosis, but let's just call it under.
Yeah, sure.
And I was talking about, you know, the percentage of energy frequency we bring, that animates the body. And he was saying that it differs during your life. Like you'd say, an avatar.
I found that too. Yeah, that's right.
And I said, okay, so when did it differ for you? And he said, oh, when I was a teenager, I had less. Like I was more, maybe let's call it ego focused, then maybe I don't think we have words to explain this, Rich.
Well, body focused. He was more.
Yeah, more body focused than consciousness focused. Like I don't. Yeah, because the body.
I know what you
the
mean.
body has its own consciousness. Like the body has its own. And I thought, wow, fascinating, interesting, because you know, as children, we seem to be more psychic and connected, and then we go through the puberty thing, and we become teenagers, and we become grumpier and more resistant and more, you know, like we become less.
Speak for yourself, Karen.
Well, definitely I was. Like we become.
No, I'm kidding. No, but here's what. It turns out that the human skull hardens about the age of 8. So it's almost like the reception is not as good as it was. So in other words, it's pliable up until about the age of 8. So this is kind of borne out in the research, where up until the age of 8, many children do remember, oh yeah, I was your mom in a past life, or I was blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then it hardens. And then it's not so much, that is part of the journey. I had one person describe incarnating as being in a rocket ship traveling at, let's say, 200,000 or 300,000 miles per hour, and you jump out, and when you get into the body, you hit the body that's like a Ferrari running at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it's an adjustment. However, that machine is running. So when you jump into the seat, the cockpit, you're unfamiliar with this machine you're in, and you reach around and you're toggling switches, and you're saying, wait a second, I thought this is not working. This switch is broken. But you're like, you're in for a penny and in for a pound. And now you're just going to adjust. And so now you adjust. And of course, part of the journey that you signed up for, if you look carefully at the contract that you signed up for to play that role,
the agreement,
very bottom, it says, yes, it says, in perpetuity throughout the universe, and things may not be as large as they appear. Other things about your body are not going to function the way you thought they were, but get over it. Deal with it. You'll figure it out. And I think what happens is, and like your friend was saying, the energy I've seen, even though Michael Newton thought of this as a finite number, I've heard from people that it changes.
It changes.
Depending if you're in a coma, right? While you're asleep. Other consciousness altered events, like a near-death experience, or maybe a drug experience, ayahuasca or whatever.
Yeah.
You may then, and so that energy you may feel more energized, or you may zip off and reconnect with the other 2/3, and like you do under deep hypnosis.
Yeah.
I felt that the first time I did a session, I went through this experience of remembering a previous lifetime where I was a Native American.
Right.
Your conscious mind the whole time is mocking you. Oh yeah, sure, you're making this up. You're a screenwriter. Come on. But ultimately, when I made my path back to this other place, I could feel how depleted I was energy-wise. And I was instructed to sit in a chair. And I found myself, surrounded by these lights. And as almost like in Star Trek, where I was re-energized or reanimating myself, and I could see parts of my body that were just completely wounded, healing, coming back to light. And then feeling, once I was back, as if I had merged. You remember the film Terminator 2? And in that,
I don't think I watched that one. But
all
I
right,
know.
but there's a wonderful robot in Terminator 2 played by an actor named Robert Patrick. And whenever you hit him or shot him, like a piece of him would fly.
Yeah.
And then he'd stand there and it would turn into molten lead or silver, and then race across the field and reconnect with him. Like it just was coming back to animate. I can't think of anything in life that does that other than maybe water. But it's that idea. You reconnect with your energy that's back over there. And now you're feeling 100%. And you remember your previous lifetimes. You can goof around. You can shift your consciousness around. You can do all these things that you were talking about.
I know, like you say, access all areas. You've got the backstage pass. And I often say that about my mob, they've given me the backstage pass because for some reason I seem to be able to access all areas if I want to. It's not like I do all the time, but, because you access what you need to access when you need to access it. But, putting it into a percentage, our energy is so infinite. I think that only the human mind needs some sort of structure, some linear concept to try and wrap our puny little linear minds around. To say 2/3, 1/3 is just a way to understand it, because I think our energy is infinite, and we beam that, an aspect, a part of that energy in to animate this beautiful little, bod.
Well, I only use it in terms of, and I know what you're saying, but I only use it in terms of the body of research on the topic, which is to say that, Michael Newton claimed that he had 7,000 clients, before he published. And so he's claiming that, like a third, 20 to 40% was the median. And some people I've heard him say, well, I brought 80%. And I've heard other people say, well, I've only got 10%. And so I think to myself, I think at this moment they're accessing that. While I'm asking the question.
Right.
And it happens all the time when someone's under deep hypnosis where they're remembering a previous lifetime, and you'll say, what year is this? And they'll say 1870. And then a little later on they go, oh no, it was 1807. And it's almost like the memory shifts because they realize that can't be. I mean, I'm remembering these events and I knew that didn't happen then, whatever. And so I'm thinking the mind, as you're remembering details, whether it's a number or, or something else, it's shifting.
What I really feel is that as we start on our spiritual exploration and journey, we start to expand that percentage, let's call it. We start to, Oprah Winfrey had this guy on her show years ago. Now, don't ask me his name, but he was in a plane crash, and he was exiting the plane as he was watching the burning bodies burn in their seats. And he was not spiritual at that point at any time, but what he saw lights leaving the body as people were burning in their seats. And he said some lights were brighter than others. And this sort of put him on his spiritual path. And he said, I wanted to investigate what that light was and why were some bright lights brighter than others. And then that took him on his spiritual exploration. And he said to her, I want to be one of those bright lights. When I exit the body, I'm going to be a bright light that exits. So I think that what he's saying, he's talking about the same thing as you expand your awareness and your consciousness, as you raise your vibe, as you become more loving, you get over all your grievances, you forgive people, yada yada, you know, all that stuff, that all the good stuff that we're supposed to do. You allow more of that light to inhabit your being while you're here, and then you've kind of got access, or you know, you've got more access to all of that.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you know, I understand what you're saying. It goes back to this thing of understanding the journey. And for me, it's like, okay, what is the journey? Like, how does the journey work out? I just remember George Harrison comes to mind. Mm-hmm. He was worried that, because at one point some guy stabbed her, you know, tried to kill him. And he was like, yeah, stabbed him in the neck at his home, broke into his house. And he said, you know, that he had, you know, been taught and learned in, you know, the Hindu religion, that your moment of death, it was really important to be at peace. So he thought, you know, if he dies grappling with this guy, which he then was doing, rolling around on the floor with this guy, trying not to get stabbed, killed, he thought, oh, I don't want to spend eternity like rolling around with this guy on the floor. Okay. Harry Dean Stanton is a friend of mine. This is an actor who was in the show Big Love, and he was a pretty renowned atheist.
That was about polygamy, wasn't it? Big Love?
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Bill Paxton and Harry Dean. I knew Harry Dean pretty well. So recently he passed away. Right. And I interviewed him on the Flipside about what it was like over there.
Yeah.
And what's funny about that is because he's very famous for being an atheist and saying there's nothing over there. And I was like, so what, you know, what was it when you realized there was something? He said, at first I thought you fall into a dream. And he thought he was in a dream. And the dream, by the way, was presented to him by Luana, our mutual friend.
Right. Okay.
She was very tight with Harry.
Right.
And what makes it so interesting is that just a month prior to this interview with Harry passing away, I had learned that Luana and Harry Dean Stanton and another guy had driven up to the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 together. So, but he's now through a medium telling me, you know, I thought I was in a dream. I was in this car. It was 1967. I was with Luana and this other guy. It's other guy I know. And I was thinking, God, this is so weird. I just heard this story a month ago, 20 years, 50 years after it happened. Anyway, and so he described this idea of thinking he was that's the afterlife. You fall into a lovely dream. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And ultimately, they had a flat tire. And when they got out to fix the flat tire, he looked at the guy fixing the tire and said, wait a second, we didn't have a flat tire. And the guy went, I know. And it was at that moment he realized he was actually in the afterlife. He said, it's like they gave me a soft landing.
They had to ease him into it because he was so fixed in his ideas about rubbish. You know, that's
right.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Beautiful story. You often wonder about atheists who passed, you know, how they ease you into it. By the way, you're dead. You know, you're not in your body.
Can I tell you? So I interviewed in this book, and it gets a little far afield, and we wouldn't have to get into it too much. But I decided that I would just see who I could talk to. Mm. And at first I focused on just people I knew, people I had met.
What about George Harrison? Have you chatted to him?
I did. That's what made me think of him.
Okay.
So the idea, though, is I'm not trying to sell celebrity. Look, this is my business. My brother was engaged to his sister-in-law. So it's not that I didn't have a connection to him, you see.
This is George Harrison.
George Harrison's wife, her sister, and my brother were engaged. They didn't get married. But so I had that little weird connection. Then I have another friend who was very tight with him and produced some of his work. So it's easier if you have a frequency connection. Of course, if you just say, I want to talk to, Genghis Khan, and you don't know anybody who knows Genghis Khan, whoever you're talking to, it's going to sound like craziness, right? Unless you know enough details about the great Khan. I'm just saying. So in our case, what we started with was people that I knew that had passed away, like Bill Paxton, who was a good friend of mine. I've known him his whole career. Knew his wife. I haven't met his kids, but Harry Dean Stanton I knew very well, and we go through a list of people who kind of appear because they knew them. So the setting, what I do is we set up this thing. First it was Jennifer and I would be meeting in a cafe, and she would say, so-and-so's here. And I would say, really? What do they want? Why are they here? What do they want to say to us? They want to encourage you to write about this. And I'd be like, all right, that's very nice. Then I started with the questions, like, what's it like for you over there? And eventually, after about a year of doing this with Jennifer, and I write about it in Hacking the Afterlife, because we talked to a famous person who passed away, Amelia Earhart, who I had been working on a film for 30 years about her. And I had 3 different mediums answer questions directly from her. Same questions, 3 different mediums, same answers. But the answers that nobody knows, that I know because I've done so much research. I'll just leave it at that. And new information, stuff that nobody knows, that I found out from her, that I then went, oh my God, I had no idea this was true. She told me something from the other side. So it's that, anyway, I'm getting to the structure, which is that we have a classroom that is run by Luana, my friend who passed away. She's our moderator. When somebody new comes into class, no matter how excited they are to talk to somebody, because they all know that they can talk to people. We're the ones who don't believe we can hear them.
Okay, so what you're saying is they all know, on the flip side, that they can talk to people, as in incarnated people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the incarnated people that are like dope, and they're
they don't believe it. That they're reaching out to them.
Yeah.
Imagine how frustrating that is to be standing over a loved one shouting, I'm fine. It's okay.
I've seen it so many times, Rich. I've seen it so many times. It is. And I know we're so like, we're in the cone of silence, and and they're like knocking, and we're going, there's a funny noise. What's that funny noise? Yeah.
Well, I love that message that you got, which was so direct, but it was also non-denominational. The message you got from that woman who said, like, I'm okay. Everything's okay. It's as it's meant to be. And that's not interrupting your path. She's not saying, oh, look, here's what happens. You go and you die and think about it, like I'm doing. I'm disturbing the force. Yeah. She's not doing that. She's just letting you know, from as much information as she can pass to you, is I'm okay.
She was bringing me peace because I wasn't at peace with her passing. Yeah,
I'm okay. And you will eventually understand why and how I'm okay. So don't stress over it. But, I keep asking the question to these people over there, why are you in this class? Why have you appeared? Why are you talking to me? And they answer with a variation of, it's time. People can handle this method. And what I do is I go, so give me a method. What's the best method to talk? I mean, as a medium.
Before we go into the method, it's time, as in, it's time for humanity. It's time for you guys to wake up and smell the roses. It's time.
Yeah, it's time.
It's time to stop being so blinkered.
Cone of silence.
Cone of silence.
Yeah, take the blinkers off.
Take your blinkers off. Love that. Okay, so it's time, right? And going on to the method.
Well, in terms,
ask you, why?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you chatting to them? Like, why do you need a medium?
Well, I do hear things myself often, and I say to the medium, did you want to say this? And she'll say, did you just walk into my head? She said that to me yesterday. I was just transcribing one of the things. She said, his daughter says she wanted to be I said, a playwright. She said, I didn't say that. Well, I heard it. But yeah, no, I think we're all that way. We're all that way. And
I do too.
And I know, and this is what my friend Jennifer always says, and I'm sure it's true for you. It would be wonderful if you didn't have to tell anybody anything. If you could just enjoy your life and your journey. If they could find it out for themselves. But that's not the case. They come to you because your frequency is tuned so that you can hear these messages. And it's really important to honor you for that, to thank you for that, because you're taking something a lot of people would put blinders on, cone of silence, until their next life they go, Jesus, why did and I've been able to do this for like many lifetimes. I don't know why I don't help people.
Yeah.
It is helping heal people. And I think there's no more noble calling than we can have.
I used to get frustrated with psychics because they would just regurgitate a whole lot of stuff about you already knew. And I used to say, what point is that? Like, you pay someone a couple of $100 to hear you went on a trip and your mother died and blah, blah, all this stuff you know about your life, right?
Yeah.
And people were like, oh my God, she's so amazing. She told me this and this and this and this and this, all the stuff you know. And I'm like, well, what did she tell you that you didn't know?
Yeah,
but,
new information.
New information, exactly. And then my mob said to me, well, this whole psychic phenomena has been to show, to present evidence that psychic ability is possible. So a whole lot of people are going to a whole lot of psychics just to present this evidence, which was not my job as a medium or a psychic to do that. And actually, I can't do that. I don't see people's houses or know that they've been, I don't get that information. And it wasn't a part of my plan. But
lottery numbers.
It was a part of many, many other psychics' plans because people needed that evidence that you can actually tap into an expanded consciousness and expanded awareness. So, well,
let me ask you, so what was your first conscious thought that you could talk to spirit?
Oh, I've got that book behind me because I've written all about it in the book. I've written a couple of books about it, but Mum dies when I'm 16 and she's coming to me in dreams telling me she didn't die. And I'm saying to her, well, where the hell have you been if you didn't die?
That's funny.
And then I'd wake up in the morning and go, oh my God, she's still dead. Because in the dream, much like you in your astral experience or whatever you want to call it, it is as real as real as real as real. So in this conversation I'm having with my mother in this other reality, I'm believing I'm real.
So is she part of your mob?
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, that's a long story. She's actually reincarnated and she's now 21. And so I've watched her for 21 years.
You know her?
I know, yeah. I've watched the continuity. So I knew her as my mother, like just doing the Hollywood thing. She was very beautiful when she was young and she's still very beautiful now that she's in another body. She was so beautiful that when Frank Sinatra came out here many, many moons ago, he dated her for a little while. And, I think he said, show me the most beautiful woman in Sydney. And
there you go.
They presented her. It's like, but she had a lot of dreams and a lot of desires she didn't fulfill in that life. And I'm watching her fulfill them in this life. So is she part of my mob? Yes, but in more ways than one.
Well, there's also that aspect that some part of her is always back home.
Always there.
Always
and this
home.
is what's so interesting. She came to me in a very clear vision as Mum.
Yeah.
When her current incarnation was a child of about, I don't know, I can't remember how old she was. She was little. But she came to me as Mum in a vision in the shower when my best friend committed suicide. She came to me to tell me. But I was in the shower and I said, look, I don't have time for this. I've got to go. I'm busy. I shoot her away. So, we're much more malleable. There's not this blob here and then a blob there. There's no such thing as time, which is what you were talking about. It's much more expansive and malleable and, as you say, what do they call it? Quantum
entanglement. Yeah.
Entanglement. We are much more entangled. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a topic that comes up quite a bit, and people do, they have an experience after life or between lives where they feel like there is no time and we can experience all lives at the same time. But it's important to note that that's something you can experience, but in terms of lifetimes, there's a linearity. And that linearity, because you wouldn't learn anything.
There's a continuum. It's like to be a witness to someone's life.
Yeah.
In my one lifetime, I'm watching someone experience two lifetimes. it's so fascinating to see.
Well, that's unusual.
This
That's
continuum. Pretty cool. Well, I think we're all doing it all the time. We're just not privy to it.
Yeah, that's true. No, and you do meet people on the road and you feel like, I feel like I've known you forever.
Yeah.
And it's likely you have.
Yeah, and grandmothers, children, grandchildren often are grandmothers that you died and all this sort of stuff. It's off.
Yeah.
You look so much like your grandmother, they'll say, and they'll go, yeah, it's like, because you are your grandmother. And,
I'll tell you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, when my daughter was little, we got in the car, I think she's about 5, and she goes, put your seatbelt on. And I said, now listen, kid, I'm the mother in this life. You might have been, I'm supposed to be the one that says that to you. And she looked at me with this cheeky little grin and she said, I'm the mother, I'm the mother, I'm the mother. And, we were kind of arguing about roles. It's like,
that's
no,
hilarious.
You're the kid this time. I'm the mother this time.
Well, I like that. There's a scene in a movie if I ever heard it, right?
Pardon?
Very funny. There's a scene in a movie, if I ever heard it. I'm the mother. No, you're not. You're the child.
This time you're the child, yeah.
That's very good. Well, I was going to say I've done this a little bit with, I don't know if you're familiar with channeling Eric.
Oh, yeah. I chat to Eric. I love Eric. I was actually on Elisa's show the other day, and she's one of the authors in my book behind me.
Very good.
I love channeling Eric. And, I love that she and you're both the same in that you've got these beautiful, inquisitive minds. And you're intelligent, and she does the same thing. She's interviewing people in the afterlife.
No, I know, and we've interviewed some of the same. In fact, it was through when I first met her. What happened was I had heard something online. I had found her website, and I had heard something online that she didn't hear. So it was like there was an interview that was being done, and you could hear people responding while the medium was asking the question. So, have you been reincarnated? And then you hear a voice go, yes. Yeah. And then she would say, I heard him say yes. And I was like, I heard him say yes too.
Exactly.
So I pointed that out to her, and so we became friends. And then I saw her once when she was in LA.
Hey, girl.
But recently, she was doing a session with somebody, and they were talking to Eric. I can't remember. Oh, they were interviewing not Christopher, but Stephen Hawking. And at the very end of the Stephen Hawking interview, if you get a chance to,
it's a good interview with Veronica Drake. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Oh, very good. And it was at the very end. There's just a few seconds before it ends, and Elise says, "Love you, Eric," and you can hear Eric say, "Love you, Mom."
Love you, Mom.
It's clear as a bell.
She just put up an interview she did with me the other day, and I'm rabbiting on. I'm not being interviewed by, talking to Eric. She's just talking about deliberate creation. So I'm just rabbiting on like the way I rabbit on. But I'm talking about being deliberate in creating that connection. To create anything, you have to, be deliberate and relax and chill out. And I'm saying, why do people want to connect with their loved ones? Because they want to return to that good feeling. They want to feel good again. They want to return to love. And then you hear Eric in an EVP at exactly 39 minutes say, yeah.
You're kidding. Oh, so that's you. Does she have that up online? Because I'll take a look.
I tell you what else. I did an interview with I don't call them interviews. I call them conversations. With Lisa Wettenheimer, who channels Prince, and the two of us were channeling Prince. And there's an EVP on that where Lisa's saying, he did that for good reason. He was talking about him changing his name to the symbol. And we were talking about the political, why he did that, and, had slave on his, anyway. And there's a very strong EVP in that too, where he says, I sure did, or something. And it's his voice. If you listen to interviews with him and then you listen to that EVP, it is his voice. It's fantastic.
Oh, that's fabulous.
I love that.
Well, it's interesting because, the reason you mentioned his name is because he shows up quite a bit.
Oh, he's amazing. I could tell you stories about Prince. Lisa calls him Saint Germain. She says that he was Saint Germain in a past life, Purple Rain, if anyone talks about Saint Germain, Purple Rain, and look, he's amazing. Prince is amazing. And what's even, when he was alive as Prince, I was not attracted to him or his music at all. I only became a fan of Prince after he exited the Matrix.
Well, it's odd because I met him years ago when I was writing music reviews for Variety. And so I was assigned to, do one of his shows. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this guy he was so talented. Oh, so amazing. But I saw him backstage. I was at a VIP thing with him. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy's really full of himself and, blah, blah, blah. And I had that kind of weird blinders on. And it wasn't until, because he showed up willy-nilly. We didn't ask for him to show up. He just showed up in one of our conversations, me and Jennifer. We talked to him at Hacking the Afterlife, and then he's shown up quite a bit in our classroom where he talks about frequencies. This big thing is music. He talks about using music to ride frequencies. Plus, he talks about, because we've interviewed people who claim that, when they crossed over, he was there or somebody like him was there and yanked them and put them right on stage. And so they went right from like, I'm dying, to being on stage with a crowd of like 50,000 people cheering. And this one musician that I was friends with, he said, I thought I was on stage until I saw my mom in the front row. And then I realized I'm not on stage. I can't be. My mom passed away. Yeah. Oh, that means I've passed away. Another one of those soft landings.
Another soft landing. Your work is fascinating, Rich. You know what I want to... Okay, there's a couple of things I wanted to say.
Please.
A young man said to me the other day, I don't want to talk about woo-woo stuff anymore. I want to get more real because people are not grounded enough. And people want to talk about afterlife and they want to talk about Kundalini and they want to talk about aliens and they're all up there, but, we've got to bring this, make it real, make it grounded. So the question came to mind was, how does this, knowing all this, affect our physical lives? But you actually answered that in the first part of the conversation, because you said, the Stanford University stuff is doing studies about it. And then they're bringing through amazing technology, like what they're learning in their light classes, for a better word, where, they're imparting this knowledge to us and we're bringing it into this dimension. So it's very grounded in that respect.
And I would say there's two aspects to that question. And to answer it, one is there science that people are doing? Science as we know it. And the answer is yes. So if you look at the University of Virginia, there's a group called the Department of Perceptual Studies, DOPS. And the people involved, I've met them all. We have Dr. Bruce Grayson, who does near-death events. We have Ed Kelly, who has written some unbelievable books about psi, ESP. Those books are fantastic. Dr. Jim Tucker, who writes about reincarnation, he took over the work from Ian Stevenson. So you've got real scientists, peer-reviewed journals talking about real stuff. So that's great. But there's another aspect, which is this grounded thing. And I must say, it came up the other day in a conversation we were having with someone over there. And they said, you're getting it mixed up. Being open to hear, using the highest chakra on your body, that's grounding you. That's where you're grounded. It's there that you need to be grounded. It's here because we're having this experience on stage. I like to call it in the fish tank.
Hang on. Okay. Say that again. I want you to say that again. So you're getting it mixed up. Okay, so people are all talking about their chakras and anyway. So focus on your base chakra and ground and,
Focus on this chakra. This chakra is the one that connects you directly to the other side where that's our normal state of being.
Yeah.
So you're connected to that. This is all virtual reality, like the VR headset that you pop on.
Yes.
And this is how, the Ready Player One, this is how we experience the journey and everything else. But when you take off the goggles, you're back home.
Okay, so to be grounded, you actually open your crown chakra. Now that is illuminating. Thank you.
I can't take any credit for it. I heard it like in a session the other day.
From the Flipside.
Jennifer and I were saying, what does that mean? What are you talking about? So, but I was going to tell you in terms of Elise and channeling Eric.
Yeah.
So Elise, called me up and she said, Rich, I've got these, different mediums that want to participate. And so would you do me a favor and interview them? And I think she thought I was going to interview them, the way a skeptic would, because I'm a film guy, and I would say so tell me, that sort of way. But as you can hear, I'm not interested in that. So I have interviewed, maybe half a dozen mediums like yourself, and asked them the same question I asked you. Is like, what was your first conscious thought about mediumship, or that you could hear people? Now it's interesting because you are connected to the person who came through to you very clearly was somebody you knew and somebody you stayed in touch with. And that's fantastic. And it's unique. People like Tony Stockwell, I talked to him. He wasn't doing a channeling Eric thing. I just happened to meet him, and I said, can I interview you? And we did this interview. And he said, there was a little boy that used to show up in my bedroom. And I said, is he part of your mob? And he said, no, I've never seen him since. And I said, would you like to? And he said, what do you mean? And what I've found, if I use the same questions that people ask while you're under deep hypnosis, if I ask the same questions, especially to someone like you, who already has the doorway half open, people can not only access the flip side, but they can meet their guides, have a conversation with their guides, and then go in and meet their counsel.
Yeah.
The guides who guide the guide.
Yeah. And
I've been doing that now, and there's some videos on my website, Martini Prods, on YouTube. I did it with Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew is a kind of famous psychologist.
I saw that episode. And it was something that I wanted to talk to you about in this too, because, so people are always asking me, how do I connect with my mob, my guides? I gave them a prettier name years ago. I called them blissful beings, because it was what I called my massage business when I was a young masseuse. And they said, who do you think blissful beings are, Karen? When I was saying, what's your name? What's your name? And so the mob.
I'm curious why when you're making those, like a funny voice they always sound like Americans. They never sound like Aussies. Why is that? I'm kidding.
What was I saying? I've lost my.
Why is that? What are you talking about?
Saying? What were we just? I've lost my train of thought now.
Blissful beings. So the question was, how do you connect to the people on the other side?
You interviewing the psychologist on the show. So I watched you do this, like he's, just asking, close your eyes and asked him questions, and he said, you've hypnotized me. And so it was just so simple, so easy, easy. And this is what I say to my little tribe. It's easy, 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 easy. Because once I, found out that I was doing it, I realized I'd been doing it all my life. And I realized that you've just got to make it easy. It's, it's not extra, it's who we are. We are connected. It's just this, it's this thought that we're not connected. Like they say in the movie Powder, a little block in our third eye, you just unplug it, and you're just like, you're connected. And you just got to unblock it by changing your mind. And so watching you do this to this psychologist and having him on the flip side, chatting away to his mob and sitting in the radio studio with you and talking to you, and he's saying, you've hypnotized me, but you did it in a second, or, you didn't hypnotize me.
Well, what's funny, as I said, I'm drinking coffee. I don't know how I could possibly hypnotize you, A. And then B, I'm not telling you what you're saying. You're telling me. I'm asking questions. If I could do it, if I could do that, wave that thing. I have no idea how to do that. But my favorite moment is when he said to me, I said to him, can we ask your guide to walk you into your counsel? And he said, what's a counsel? And I said, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to your guide who knows what I'm talking about. So either he's going to walk us in or he's not. That's up to you. And then he went like, okay, we're inside, blah, blah, blah. I just thought that was hilarious because, of course, his conscious mind was saying, I don't know what it is you're talking about.
Yes.
It also shows that he's not familiar with the research or literature or he's ever seen me do that before. He has no concept of what a counsel might be. None. Zero.
Okay.
And
So to get your version of the council, because I was having a bit of a chat with my mob before we came on, and because I was re-listening to your interview with George.
What would they like to know?
Well, I said to them, about the council. I said, is the council your soul family? And they gave me some ideas about that. So I want to hear your ideas, and then I'll tell you what they said to me. Who are the council?
Well,
who are the council?
I'll just give you the quickest I could put it. Michael Newton discovered when he was doing these sessions that people would describe going in to meet these elevated beings, elevated blobs of light, right?
Yeah.
And everybody had a different sort of experience. Sometimes it was like awe-inspiring. Sometimes, in my case, I felt like I was going to see some old friends of mine. So I had that weird experience.
Right.
That these guys on the council are anywhere from 6 to 12. I've met a couple of people who've had like 3 or 4. But in Newton's case, 6 to 12 individuals, roughly. That's about as many as you can handle. Now, what I've discovered, and I just discovered it like this past week, was that because I realized there's no reason I can't ask questions to these council members. Hypnotherapists normally don't ask questions. Where are we? Where would you like to go? They go, I want to go visit my council, or whatever. And then they get in there and they kind of say, describe the environment. And I go, skip all that. Let's go up to the first guy, take a hold of his hand. What's his story? What's his name? What are you doing here? I'm like Columbo, I'm like the detective on the case. Like, how did you get into this council? But what's funny is I asked, apropos of nothing, I said the other day I was doing this with somebody. Where was it? It's like a coffee shop or something. No, it was a restaurant. It was like a studio executive who was asking me about the Dr. Drew. And I said, do you want to talk to your council? So next thing you know, we're talking. So I said to her council member, one of them, she had, I think 9 on her council. I went around each one. Who are you? How did you earn this position on their council? Give me a word that represents your role. And they always give me one word. Even though these people have no courage, in this case it was courage. She had seen this council member, it was an African council member who was dressed like a slave, she said. And I said, why are you dressed like that? She said, to represent the struggles that our friend is going through in her life. And I learned acceptance with courage. Okay, thank you. But ultimately, I was going to say, you go up and you ask, so the thing I asked her, which I've never asked before, I said, so how many councils are you on?
Right.
And she said 3.
Right.
That was new. That was news. And then I went to her lead council member. Everybody has one. They're usually the spokesperson. Usually you don't talk to them. They all sit there. And this lead person does all the chatting. But I've learned they don't get to talk to anybody. So go talk to them. What's the big deal? This lead council member said that she's on 12 different councils. And I thought, wow, it's disconcerting for people to hear that their council is also moonlighting with other people that they might even know. So how about
I don't find that disconcerting at all. I find that beautiful.
Well, you're open to it, but other people are like jealous. Like, what? What do you mean? I thought you're only here for me. I can tell you that. It's all about me. Yes.
But it shows you that there is no me. There is only we. This whole me thing.
That's right. No, it's true. Anyway, so it's fascinating to be able to talk to council members. In my case, I found 8. And I didn't go around each one of them because I didn't know I could. I was just following the hypnotherapist's, lead. And I had one spokesperson who spoke on behalf of everybody. I had questions to ask him, which he answered. The main question that people ask when they get to their council is to ask, why me? Why did I choose me? Why did I choose this lifetime?
Why did I choose this body, this personality, these circumstances, this life, this lifetime?
Bingo.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And only you can answer that.
Yeah.
I can't answer for anybody else, but I could answer for me. I understood clearly when they showed me, and I saw in my mind's eye, which, by the way, they showed me like a glimpse of it, and I felt like, oh, I get a glimpse of this, and then 2 or 3 sessions later, remember, I did 5.
Yeah.
I was like full on. I was right there. It was a life planning session. So I had a glimpse of it. It was just enough information for me to say, I feel like I was at my life planning session, and I said, I'd like to be this guy, this film guy.
Yeah.
Because the kind of work that he's going to do is going to heal people.
Mm.
And I said, I just wish I had chosen somebody more successful at it, which got a laugh from everybody on the council, and it got a laugh from the hypnotherapist. The only time in my life I've heard laughs from 2 different realms at the same time. But subsequently, since then, I think it was the 5th session that I did with Scott Tatamel, where I was at that session, fully looking around the room, me arguing, all right, now here's what I want to do. I think this is the ego of humans. This is really going to work. I am going to do this, and I'm going to save people with that, and blah, blah, blah. Now, I must tell you this, and this is why I want to talk to your council. I've heard council members say to me, they're doing a session with somebody else, and they'll go, oh, we have a message for Rich.
Yeah.
And the message is something like, keep up the good work, or keep going, or you're on the right path, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's never like, no.
Yeah.
I did hear one really great quote, and it's good for your audience. I had heard it from a filmmaker that I knew who passed away. And he said, nobody ever comes over to this side wishing that they held back more during their life.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's a good one. Don't hold back.
It's interesting because I think there's books that have been written, deathbed confessions and by nurses and stuff like that and people are even having that thought before they leave the body. I wish I had kissed that girl when I had the chance. I wish I had have done that thing. I wish I had have not held back. Yeah. I wish I had have been braver, more courageous, done it, motion forward, just gone out there and done it. Yeah.
Next time.
Next time. Well, this is the argument for reincarnation that a lot of scientists say too. You're not going to live fully if you think you can get it right next time.
Well, that's funny, but as I'm fond of saying, I had a professor who used to say this to me. In fact, he's in the book. He used to say, "I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong."
Yeah, I know.
I mean, the thing is that generally, what I'm hearing consistently is that there's no religion that's got all the answers. Mm-hmm. They all lead to the same garden. Mm-hmm. My new saying I like to say is all roads lead to home, mm-hmm. which is that place that we go back to. And so it doesn't matter if somebody's got it right or got it wrong or have a mistake, or that's the path that they chose. Mm-hmm. to be here and hang out and experience and be the scientist with the helmet on, the cone of silence. Because listen, if as an athlete, if you go on the field and you put those helmets on, let's say, or whatever it is, you're playing rugby, and somewhere in the middle of the game you start going, do I really need to be out here running people over? The game's over. You've ruined yourself. So there's something to be said for the person who just, damn it all, just goes right onto stage, give me the spear, I'm going to learn everything later. Yeah, I'm going to enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Like you in the shower saying, later, I can't deal with you right now. Mom.
I know, it's a funny
story. Talk to me later.
Talk to me later. It's the most vivid experience I've had because she really engaged all my physical senses.
Wow.
I see them very clearly in here, but I love like the Jamie Butler. Jamie Butler was one of the first mediums Lisa met who spoke to, and
sure.
I've had her on the show, and she,
I met her. She's lovely.
She's amazing. She perceives subtle energy through her outside eyes, and I've had a few spoken, and that always fascinates me I can see lights and sort of a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but nothing like these people perceive. Their ability of perception with their physical senses is just mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing.
Well, do you want to hear a cute story about Jamie?
Yeah.
So I got an email from a woman in South Carolina that I've never met. Mm-hmm. I interviewed her for Hacking the Afterlife, but I don't know her. And we spoke maybe via Skype, I think. That's as much as I know of her. But she sent me an email and she said, "You're supposed to see Jamie Butler." Right. And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I was washing the dishes in my apartment and Jesus came through and told me to tell you to go see Jamie Butler." And I thought, Jesus? Really? Is that who had to come through to tell you that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Got the big guns out.
But I'm thinking to myself, I don't know Jamie, but I look her up. Turns out she's in LA that week. Right. And so I went over to, one of the things that she was doing.
Yeah.
And I introduced myself and I said, I used some of your interview with Eric in my book, Hacking the Afterlife. Thank you. Because I'd emailed her. I'd never met her. And so she was channeling Eric at that moment. And so Eric was saying to me, "Can you help my mom with the movie that she's supposed to make out of my book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll try that. But Eric, let me tell you how I got here." And I told him the story. And then he said, "Oh, so you met my pal, right? My pal Jesus came through." And I said, "Well, what about him? Can we talk to him?" And she said, "Come back tomorrow." So the next day I came back for the next session. And she channeling an English woman that she channels.
Grace.
Grace. Very good. And the entire session was Grace interviewing Jesus. It was fascinating. And she went around the room and everybody in the room got a chance to ask a question and get an answer. What's fascinating to me about this whole research, especially in his case, is that his story is an alternate story to what everybody's heard. I write about it in Hacking the Afterlife.
He, as in Jesus, you're talking
as in the dude, yeah, the guy who was here.
All right, okay, I'm just making sure that you're talking about he as not as in Eric, as in Jesus.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's all. And it's just fascinating because I filmed it. I had never seen it before. It was that idea of her as somebody else, not as Jamie, but as Grace, interviewing this guy and letting him speak through her to people's questions. And it was hilarious because at some point somebody was offended because Jesus didn't say, "I love you," when he finished talking and complained. And so it was just one of those weird, funny things that people do. So anyway, the point is we go into a brain freeze when we use names like that. I do anyway.
Yeah.
We do. It's a brain freeze. And so I avoid using those names generally.
I avoided using his name for years as well.
Yeah. But what I realized when I was doing Hacking the Afterlife, I realized I avoided talking about how many people, and there were at least a dozen, who would approach me apropos of nothing. Guy from India, person, in a conference somewhere, just comes over to me, starts telling me, I have this recurring dream that I lived at the time of. Or in the case of Flipside, a woman, a close friend of mine, who under hypnosis suddenly starts saying, I'm living and I'm seeing him and he's like a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Apropos of nothing. So at some point I realized I was the one preventing his story, let's say, without a capital H, this fellow story who kept showing up willy-nilly, I was preventing telling that story. So I do that in Hacking the Afterlife. I find it very unusual. That book's been out for maybe 2 years now, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. People complain about my research about Amelia Earhart because they don't want to hear that she was captured by the Japanese and died on Saipan. I've been to Saipan. I've got tons of research showing what happened to her. But nobody complains about this Jesus research. I find that really fascinating. So has he shown up in any of your sessions?
Darling one, let me just show you. I was, oh, bugger. Get out of the way.
Bugger? Did you call Jesus a bugger? Is that what you said?
I'm trying to,
Jesus, you heard her. You heard her, didn't you? I'm sorry. Wait, before we get there, before we go there.
Yeah.
Your counsel. Let's talk to we were talking about your counsel. We don't have to go down this path anyway. I was just randomly riffing, but we were talking about your counsel.
Okay. The question I asked you is, who are the counsel? Are they different to your soul family? Are they different to your guides? Are they different to your angels? So who are they? Like I just mob them all in together because
Mom, I like that.
They show me, they showed me this faceless mob of more people than I could count that were just like outlines of bodies.
Yeah.
That was just light, really. And I used to scream out, when I was young, like everyone had a name for their higher self, or they were talking to Jesus, or they were talking to Mary, or someone was channeling their, galactic guides, and they all had these identities. And I was saying, come on, guys, give me an identity. Give me an identity. Who am I talking to here? Because they just presented this as this mob. It really wasn't until I heard Esther Hicks, from the channeling, from the Abraham teachings, talk about it being a stream of consciousness, that I'm just like, my puny linear mind is trying to put this stream of consciousness into some sort of, I'm trying to dumb it down, and they're not letting me dumb it down. They're just presenting, they're like these balls of light, and I'm like, give me a face, because I've got a face, give me a face, give me a face. But I've had a couple of past life regression things, and both times, my mate Jesus has showed up, and I could not talk about him because it just reeked of Bible bashes,
Right.
And it irked me. It just irked me. So I couldn't even say his name, a bit like you, and he kept showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to make peace with that whole, how his name has been used by religious people knocking on your door saying Jesus is going to save your life. It's like, go away.
Very good. Well, two things about that. One is the mob.
The mob.
So this came as a detail just about a week ago, and it was that the amplification of the frequency is better over there if there's more people involved.
Say that again.
So the amplification of transferring messages or trying to talk to somebody is better, stronger over there. On the flip side, if more than one individual is involved. So the idea of a classroom of people trying to reach out to you or helping you access information, that makes sense. Your mob, it's like an engine. So it's like if they're all in the room at the same time, they get a stronger, better, more amplified way of conversing with you. I'm just saying. That's what came to mind. I had just heard that the other day.
Fascinating. Well, what they said to me when I asked before we came on today, I said, is it part of my soul family? And they said, no, not really. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then who is the council exactly? And they said, well, they're really a group of beings that are specifically set up to help you with what you're doing in any one lifetime, be it this. And I'm like, okay, right. And they said to me, and, depending on what you do with your life, different council members will join or leave. So I remember, if you're a historian, then you're going to have someone on the council that's going to help you with that. Or if you're an artist, then someone will help you with that. Or if you're a psychic, or, and there are different stages in your life where you are that or not that. And so those council members don't specifically need to be there when you're not, like when you were younger and you weren't doing this work, you didn't need the guys that were on your council now, or the people or the blobs of light that are there now helping you do this, so they come and go. But, you've got your soul family that's always with you, like your tribe or
your classroom, your university class. That, and there might be 100 people in there. There might be 20. There might be 10. So I've seen people and those are the people you normally are here with.
Yeah,
right?
you can dance within life, like you reincarnate.
Some of them,
with,
yeah. And there's affiliated,
and
yeah, that's right. There's affiliated people, but they're generally, the people over on the councils are generally non-incarnating. They've already gone through. So if you look at it from a hierarchical idea,
Right,
because
yeah.
I got this from, let me explain how I got this. So I was doing my second session with Scott DeTamble, and he said, can we access your guide? Now, I had met him 2 years earlier with somebody else. And so there I am. I'm seeing him again, Claire Isabel, just the same guy that I met before. And he's very open. He's a funny guy. He's a gentle but very quiet, nice guy. Let's just put it that way. So when I ask him a question, he'll give me any answer I need. He feels like a fellow traveler.
Yeah.
So I said to him, explain your journey. So Scott asked me, when did you become Richard's guide?
Right.
And so he said, well, it kind of works like this. And he went into this whole explanation. He, meaning me talking through him or him talking through me, however you put it. But as I started to speak, I physically felt myself back there, the Richard that's back there, that little guy, shift his consciousness over to the guide. Like zoop. Not all of it, some of it. That water, that quantum entanglement, I zipped over to him. So now I'm in him.
You're in him.
In him, and I'm now describing his journey.
Wow.
The many lifetimes he had.
Wow.
And the journey that he had. He said, and so now, in terms of Richard, you have to think of a soul's journey as a giant blank canvas. And you get together with your guide and you decide what paint is going to be on this canvas. And you consider each lifetime is going to give you some red and pink and blue and green. And then at the end of all your lifetimes, there's this vast, beautiful portrait of a soul. He said, I went through that experience. And when I graduated, Richard was my graduation gift. What a clever way to put it. His graduation gift was my young little soul that had only gotten so far. And now I'm presented to him. And he and I worked out roughly what I was looking to accomplish through all the journeys and all those lives, what the canvas is going to look like. And he then proceeded to help me with the very initial ones that I did, which were not here, somewhere else, etc. Until the very first time, it's like, okay, I think you're ready. And it was like caveman time. I saw a journey. Okay, and then I went through all of them, you see? Anyway, and when he's done as a guide, and he's incarnated with me a couple of lifetimes, because I begged him, I can't get through this without you. And he was like, all right, I'll play your grandfather. He came down and it did that. And when he's done with me, when I graduate, he'll join a council.
Okay, so he's not on the council, he's just a guide. Okay, this is fascinating. I love this. Right. Yeah. This is cool. Isn't this cool? Don't you think this is cool?
It's fun,
I can hear your wife and getting dinner ready, so I know you probably have to go and all.
No, it's don't worry about it. They're just back there. That's our ghosts in the house making noise. That's your
ghost in the house. Look, okay. So he's chatting to you about your soul planning sessions, but not only were you planning life planning sessions, the life of Rich Martini, you were planning a whole other life, a whole slew of them. And
the canvas.
Canvas. And he was saying, okay, so I'll come and be with you in this life. So he's your guide that is going to incarnate as your grandfather. Because, so many people say, my grandmother, she was just so beautiful. She was just so loving. And you often think, was this person having a life for them, or were they just coming to be a guide for people? To be there as that loving presence in a physical incarnation and to be there. And so he kind of did that with you in a few lives.
Well, what I would say for you, for your work, is when that happens, when somebody's talking about their grandmother, let's say, just stop them and say, can we talk to your grandmother?
Yeah.
Let's ask her.
Yeah.
And they're doing the talking, right?
Yeah.
They're listening, and you're listening as well. And you can share like, oh, I got this, I got that.
Yeah.
And you're asking a simple question. Did you do this lifetime so that you could help guide them through it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you normally in their soul group, or are you an affiliated person? And they'll answer. You'll get an answer like, I don't know. I found that you can ask questions to people not here,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't think you'd get answers to, but they answer it.
They do.
Yeah.
Because they're talking to us all the time. It's like Neil Donald Walsh wrote in the Conversation with God books, which is, you asked me that question, when did you really know that you were talking to the mob? And I was reading those books in my 30s. I was working as an energy healer, and in those books, Neil in his ego self is asking God the questions, and so there's the ego Neil, and then there's God answering brilliantly. I've got to say, it's just some of the ways that the information flows through is brilliant. And I'm having my own conversation with my own God presence, because I'm asking questions that Neil's not asking, and I'm getting the answers. And I realized during that time that, oh my God, I've got this conversation going on, like this was happening.
I think that's great.
And so he says, God says in those books, God is talking to everyone all the time. It's not a matter of who's God talking to, but who's listening.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
well, there's that.
Listening?
Well, there's that old saying that if you go into church once a week and say your prayers and talk to somebody who's not there, that's normal. It's when they reply that they call you crazy.
I know, but they were.
Show me a sign, zap. Oh my God, don't show me a sign.
Cone of silence.
Kidding.
Got to take off the cone of silence. Got to take it, because they're talking.
Well, listen, also to be fair to your listeners as well, if you go to a stereo store and you see 1,000 different stereo pieces of equipment,
Right.
Am I going to get that Pioneer or whatever the company I used to sell them? And
Right.
so, which one am I going to get? And now you plug in the speakers, you attach the speakers, and then, maybe you put on your MP3 or you put on your old vinyl thing and, put the record on there. And now you're trying to get the sound right. It takes a lot of filters, and it takes a lot of limiters, as they call them, to get the sound come through properly. It blocks out a lot of other information that's not supposed to happening, right? You block that out so you can get the message. And that frequency, as Prince would say, that frequency of the music that is just supposed to connect right to your heart so that you can feel it and hear it and experience it. That's how that message comes through. If somebody can't get the message, I was talking to somebody today, they're like, I've never heard a thing. And I think, that's okay. You chose your body, you chose the limiter, you chose the filters, so it'll get you to where you are now.
Yes.
Like your friend who was like, I don't want to hear about any more woo-woo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be grounded. That's great. That's fine. That's okay. That's the unit that he chose so that he could get to where he is now. I'm fond of saying this to people, because I meet people who are, especially when I go to India and stuff, and they're like, well, I was helping somebody, transit into the, and I got rid of the evil spirit. And I always say, it's okay not to. I know we feel the need to help people transit, and I understand that, especially if they come to you and they go, help.
Yeah.
But if they don't, the idea that we have to help people along, well, they're going to eventually get there.
Yeah.
No matter how much help we give.
Yeah.
And so that goes for people that we know and love that are thick as a brick when it comes to this stuff. And all you can say is, you're going to see what I'm talking about eventually.
I know. I had this conversation with my dad, who was a skeptic. I'm just looking at the time. I could yak with you all day.
I know.
We'll wrap it up soon. But, I said to my mob, I want to be there when I want to remember, whether I was there or not, I don't know, because I don't remember. But I want to have that memory of what he experiences when he's transitioning. I want to kind of go, I told you so, I told you so. So they never gave me that memory. Whether I was there or not, I don't know. And I didn't have connection or communication with him too much after he transitioned. And then my husband at the time, who didn't think that he could talk to dead people, says, "Oh my God, I've got your father here." He has this really clear image of him. And I said,
"Oh, that's great.
Really? Like, he's coming to you and he's not coming to me?" And, you know, this is their sense of humor, Rich. And and I said, "What's he saying to you?" And he said, "Nothing." And then I tuned into him and he wasn't saying anything. He was just smiling, you know, just smiling with this all-knowing, like, we didn't have to do that. You were right, I was wrong, I told you so. You know, it's all, that's just all ego stuff. Because once you're back there, you're just home, and you've got, you know, you've got the backstage pass, as you say, access all areas. And so the what did you call it? The virtual reality game, you see it as the game, and it's not so as
but still, you would like to be able to go, "I told you so." I know that. Just
to all those, you know, skeptics and atheists that say there's no such thing as life after death, we want to go, right. I told you.
Well, I'm fond of saying, listen, first you have to prove to me that there's life before death. Because the argument about what it is, nobody can really define what it is. You know, it's not only that we can't define death, we can't define life. Yeah. We can't define words like love. There is no scientific definition. We all understand it when we feel it, experience it. Mm. I'm fascinated by this concept of unconditional love. We don't have it here. We live in a world of conditional love.
We do, but we can have a real good stab at it. You know, we can do our best to.
Well, some parents and some pets and owners, they have an experience of it. But what these people say consistently is, back home, that's our natural state of being. And I think it's fascinating when I ask people, well, what are you feeling right now? And they'll say, "I'm feeling love." And I'll say, "What kind of love?" And they'll go, "It's unconditional."
Yeah.
And I think it's just not a term that we use like in commercials or in movies. It's not romance. It's none of that. But people do say it consistently. So it's something that a scientist can appreciate. Somebody's giving you new information about their journey and their experience that nobody else could have given them. You see, can't be a hallucination from something that they thought they knew because they've never experienced it before.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to say, you know, apropos of your dad appearing, I was with my wife and I were in Chicago recently, and something happened where my wife had this dream, and she saw my friend Luana, who she had met before Luana passed. And she said, my wife said to Luana, like, "How can you appear in my dream? It's like you died 20 years ago." And the first thing she did was showed her a little rocket ship. Like, I took my rocket ship to get here, and it was like an actual toy that my wife had seen earlier in the day. Right. So it was like she made a reference to the toy. And then she showed her the number 1111. You know, people talk about that. Of course, before digital clocks, nobody talked about 1111, but now that we have digital clocks. But her point was, just consider that for a moment. And we talked about it, and I saw it as 111 is like a hallway, right? And the other 11 is another hallway, like an architectural design. We're over here, they're over there. She said, we meet where the decimals are. So they have to lean in to us, adjust their frequency and their limiters and
kind
their
of
filters.
Dial it down a bit.
Dial it down. And we have to dial it up a little bit. There you go. And we meet in the decimals. So that's a method for people to do that. And I'll give you that 1, 2, 3. And I got this from Michael Newton after he passed.
After he passed, right.
Yes. Yep. And he said, think of the person you want to talk to. Say their name. And the idea was, I said, did you say it aloud? Or now, mind you, this is Jennifer Schaefer talking, saying this guy Morton is in the room. And I'm like, who's Morton? And she says, it's that guy that was in your book. I said, you mean Newton? She said, yeah. So who knows if it was him, right? Okay. I don't know. But this is what... So
they're confirming it was him.
So this is, okay, very good, very good. So this is what Morton is saying. Morton says, just say the name of your loved one. And now you could say it in your head or aloud, doesn't matter. And then what's the next step? He said, ask them the questions. When they answer, before you can form the question, then you'll know you've made a connection.
Yes. Exactly. Because it comes so quickly. Something I find difficult because I get information that comes so fast that it's faster than my brain can compute and it flies out. And I find myself stumbling over things and not finishing sentences because I'm getting all this information, and I'm like, can you slow it down for me? Because as you say, they need to dial it down. And we got to dial it up. Yes, it's exactly right. When you get the information that comes faster, it comes before you finish the question. That's exactly it.
So that's a way people can...
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. It was Michael that was telling you that. Oh, bless him. Darn one. Oh, look, I think we'll have to finish this on unconditional love. Just everyone contemplate that.
Thank you.
That. And it's been just fascinating and such a joy to talk with you today. It's just been beautiful.
Just a treat. And do me a favor, please send me a link when you finally put it up or however that goes.
Oh, I definitely will. Definitely send you the link.
So I can share it with my minions.
And I was having a chat to Sandra Champlain just before we came online, and I said, I'm having a chat to Rich Martini. Have you had him on the show? And she said, no. And I said, would you like to? And she said, definitely. So I'll introduce you to. Sandra, she has a podcast called We Don't Die.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So, and she'll fire some more fabulous questions. She'll love this conversation. So, thank you.
Very good, my dear. It was a treat. Okay. I will see you on the flip side.
No, you'll see me before the flip side. Gee, the wonderful Rich Martini. Boy, I've met someone that can talk more than me. How fascinating is he? Just fascinating. I have to say, I had a couple of aha moments during that conversation. I hope you did too. Just a fascinating man. We had a little chat afterwards, as we do, and he said some more profound things, and I'm like, I don't have the recording on. But one of the things he asked is, do my guides have any messages for me? And he asked me a few questions that I answered for him, and they gave me an image of them all applauding him. You know, you like when you come off stage, everyone's applauding, they're all applauding him. So he's doing good work in the world, doing brilliant work in the world, and really opening up some awareness for people about who we are, why we're here, how it all works. Because, I've interviewed quite a few different people on the show with their different puzzle pieces, and Rich has a few more puzzle pieces to the whole jigsaw puzzle that we're involved in. Just fascinating. Just loved Rich Martini. So, his book is, he's got a few books, but Hacking the Afterlife is the latest book, which I haven't read yet, actually. I'm going to read that book. And I'll pop the Amazon links up on my website. I'll put this YouTube and iTunes on my website, on a page on my website, and I'll put my affiliate links there. I always forget to tell people to do this. So if you want to buy his books, he's got The Tourist Guide to How to Navigate the Afterlife, which is called The Flipside. It's a Wonderful Afterlife. He's got a few books, and these are books that are all researchers, but his latest book is Hacking the Afterlife. That's the one where he's got Jesus and Amelia Earhart in there having a chat from the other side. So it'd be interesting to see what they have to say in Hacking the Afterlife. So head on over to my website and, purchase them on my affiliate link, and I'll get a couple of cents. It's a way of supporting the show. And thanks again for watching. It's been wonderful to be with you again. Just loved Rich. Just thought he was fantastic. And, you know, I do my normal thing at the end of the show. Buy the book, buy my book, you know, join the Inner Sanctum, book in for a session if you want to hack your afterlife. Do all that stuff. It's all good. It's all on my website. So go to my website, check it out if you want to see what I'm up to. But loved that conversation. All right, guys. Love you. Mwah. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.